Welcome back to the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast. And this is all sponsored by High Octane Classics, the Northeast's largest muscle car and supercar dealership located at 143 Washington Street in Auburn, Massachusetts. High Octane Classics buys and sells and services muscle cars and exotics. Give them a call at 508-859-4515. Okay, now a lot of you folks who have seen or heard, I should say, the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast since episode 1, you'll know that this was basically meant initially to be an audio-only listening experience. And that is indeed what the first 38 episodes are. You know, we had them on Spotify, Apple Play, Google Play, etc., etc. But now with episode 39, moving forward, we're going to have a video element included, which is me sitting here right now talking to you. And as you know, this show is all about me reading from my 2013 book, Steve Magnanti's 1001 Muscle Car Facts. And where we left off with show number 40, we're up through fact number 593. So on today's show, we're going to pick it up at fact number 594. And this is going to be the number crunching and press commentary component to the Ford and Mercury vehicle chapter. Well, guess what? At fact number 600, we're going to transition from Ford Mercury to Mopar. So it's going to be an interesting episode, this one here. Show number 41. So let's get it started with fact number 594. And again, this is the number crunching and press commentary component of my book, Steve Magnanti's 1001 Muscle Car Facts, if you're reading along at home. Okay, let's get it started. Fact 594. The 300,356 Fox body Capris sold between 1979 and 1986 is a strong showing, but pales when compared to the 2,598,078 Fox body Mustangs sold between 1979 and 1993. The Capri's main showroom disadvantage was its limitation to a single body style, a hatchback coupe. By contrast, Mustang buyers could opt for a hatch, a sedan, or after 1983, a convertible. It's true, you know, the Mustang, people think of that more first and foremost when they think about the 79 up Fox body cars, but there was a Mercury Capri, and indeed they had pretty much every engine Mustang offered, from the Turbo 4 to the V6, even the inline 6, and yes, the mighty V8 in 255 cubic inches, and yeah, the big 302 high output. So yeah, the Mercury Capri was absolutely there in the shadow of the Mustang Fox, but not as long. It again, it died off after 1986, whereas the Mustang Fox went on through 1993. Anyway, let's move on. More Fox information with fact number 595. To keep pace with the 1983 Fox body Mustang convertible, in 1984, American Sunroof Corporation, ASR, began construction of limited edition ASC Mclaren Capri convertibles. Based on decapitated Capri hatchbacks, the ASC conversion process involved the creation of specific rear quarter panel caps, trunk lids, floor pan reinforcements, and tonneau covers. Unlike the Mustang convertible, which was also done off campus at Cars and Concepts and retained its back seat, the ASC Mclaren Capri strategy used the rear seat area to store the folded convertible top. This made the car a two-seater and also necessitated reworking the windshield for an extra 10-degree angle rake. Priced at $21,000, a total of 552 ASC Mclaren convertible conversions were built. Of them, 50 in 1984, 257 in 1985, and 245 in 1986. So it's true that if you wanted a Capri convertible, your choices were far more limited than if you wanted a Mustang convertible. And again, only a two-seater, not a four-seater, at least when we're talking about the ASC vehicles. Okay, moving on. Fact 596. The turbocharged 1985 through 89 Mercury XR-4 TI sold 64,283 units in the United States. Of them, 8,974 were sold in 1985, 14,315 were sold in 1986, 14,301 in 1987, 15,261 in 1988, 8,765 in 1989, and only 2,622 in 1990, which were leftovers. Imported from the Ford Germany Carman assembly plant at Osnabrück, Germany, it took over for the Fox-based Mercury Capri and was meant to bring a high-tech European image to Mercury. In the end, its use of rear-wheel drive may have been its downfall in those days of massive consumer brainwashing on the supposed benefit of front-wheel drive. The Ford came very close to slapping Mustang badges on the front-wheel drive Pro. It got that bad. Today, the emphasis is back on rear-wheel drive, and a car like the Mercury XR-4 Ti, with the expected airbag, navigation system, and ABS upgrades, would be praised by the motoring press. Kevin Cabana, my high school math teacher, was right. Everything happens in cycles. That's right. I graduated from high school in 1982, and Mr. Cabana was my math teacher, and indeed, he would say that things happen in cycles, whether it's the economy or anything. But yeah, muscle cars come and go, and again, rear-wheel drive is back in fashion after kind of being brainwashed out of us for a good long time. It's back. Okay, let's get back to Fact 597. This is a quote. Taken individually, the Cougar and the Boss 302 are excellent, but they don't belong together, end quote. Why was such a sour introduction written for Car Life magazine's April 1970 road test of a Cougar 302 Eliminator? Well, it was because of the 430-to-1 rear axle ratio. Granted, the test car was admittedly built specifically for Lincoln Mercury's Performance Day, which was attended by automotive journalists, so the final drive was likely installed for extra excitement. It didn't appeal to the Car Life scribe, who said the 430 gear set, quote, set up more clatter than a Bahama steel drum band. The first gear cruise at 30 miles per hour made more noise than you could get by tossing an oil drum down the steps of the Washington Monument, end quote. The writer also took issue with Cougar's weight, 400 pounds heavier than the Mustang Boss 302. Some folks just don't know a good thing when they have it. Well, it is true. The Cougar Eliminator was Cougar's take on a muscle version, and most of them had 428s, 390s, and of course the 351. But those that did come with the Boss 302 were a little more high whining. But it is true. I mean, you can put 430 gears in anything, and it will seem more frantic because the engine spins higher. But apparently Car Life didn't like that. Okay, moving on. Don Nicholson facts with fact 598. Don Nicholson employed a rather unique method of warming the tires on a 1968 Cougar XR-7 GT 428 Cobra Jet during an August 1968 drag test for Superstock and Drag Illustrated magazine. Sensing the car was capable of running quicker than its previous 13.9 at 100 mile per hour pass, he, quote, whipped the car into an extremely tight turn in the staging area and held the wheel to lock, going round and around, body arched over, tires squealing. Once he was set up, he didn't have to move the wheel at all. Then Nicholson went into the same maneuver in the opposite direction, end quote. With seriously hot tires, the Cougar unleashed a 1367 and 101.5 miles per hour. The beautiful black test car was one of only 23 428 Cobra Jet powered XR-7 GTs made in 1968, 20 of which, including that test car, were equipped with the C6 automatic transmission. Yeah, it's funny, when I was a kid, I think I was watching an SCCA road race, and before the green flag fell, I watched the drivers sort of swerving back and forth, left, right, as they paced the track. And I thought, what are they doing? Well, they're heating up the tires. So that's exactly what Don Nicholson did by running figure eights in the staging area to get those Goodyears on that 428 test car good and hot. And sure enough, the thing lost 3/4, going from 13.9 to 13.6, so it definitely works. Okay, let's move on. More Cougar stuff in fact 599. Cougar always lived in Mustang's shadow when it came to showroom sales. Here's a comparison of Mustang versus Cougar sales totals. In 1967, Ford sold 472,121 Mustangs, Mercury 150,893 Cougars. 1968, Ford sold 317,148 Mustangs to Mercury's 113,726 Cougars. 1969, Ford sold 299,320 Mustangs to Cougars 100,069. 1970, Ford Mustang sold 197,045 units to Cougars 72,343. 1971, Mustang 149,628 to Cougar's 62,864. And finally, in 1972, 125,093 Mustangs sold versus just 53,702 Cougars. It's interesting to note that Mustang sales tumbled harder than Cougar sales as pony car newcomers like Camaro, Firebird, Javelin, E-Body Barracuda, and E-Body Challenger bit into Mustang's shrinking hay bale. Cougar's luxury status helped insulate it from down-market competitors. Yeah, it's true. Again, Mercury lived in the shadow of Ford. And when it comes down to the Cougar versus Mustang, indeed, that was the case. But you got to remember, the Cougar was not really meant to be the volume seller the Mustang was. It was sort of seen more as a baby Thunderbird in the eyes of the marketing people. So I'm sure they were happy with those numbers regardless. Okay, let's take a moment here to remember that this podcast of the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show is brought to you by High Octane Classics, the Northeast's largest muscle car and supercar dealership, located at 143 Washington Street in Auburn, Massachusetts. High Octane Classics buys and sells and services muscle cars and exotics. Call them at 508-859-4515. And of course, be sure to visit the Steve Magnanti YouTube channel, where you'll see lots of junkyard videos, altered wheelbase videos, and model car action. Again, the Steve Magnanti YouTube channel. You'll dig it. In fact, you might even be watching it now on this particular live podcast. Okay, this brings us up to fact number 600, and the fact that this book, Steve Magnanti's 1001 Muscle Car Facts, covers all makes. So with fact 600, we're going to get away from Mercury and Ford and get into the world of the Mopar. So here we go, the final Ford Mercury fact, number 600, and here it goes. The intermediate-sized Comet was the car of choice for Mercury buyers looking for a smaller package and Fairlane buyers seeking an extra level of refinement. Here's a comparison of Fairlane versus Comet sales totals. 1962, 297,116 Fairlanes versus 165,224 Comets. 1963, 342,887 Fairlanes versus 134,623 Comets. 1964, my birth year, 1964, my birth year, take two. 268,616 Fairlanes versus 189,943 Comets. 1965, 223,945 Fairlanes versus 165,052 Comets. 1966, a major redesign this year, by the way, and the arrival of the 390 Big Block for both Fairlane and Comet, saw 526,274 Fairlanes and only 170,426 Comets. 1967 saw 239,688 Fairlanes and 81,133 Comets. And 1968, things changed a little bit because the Torino joined the Fairlane, and of course we have to remember that the Comet was joined by the Montego. So sales of, in 1968, Torino and Fairlane, 371,787 versus 117,482 Comets and Montegos. 1969, similar deal. Fairlane and Torino sales mounted 366,911 versus 115,944 Montegos and Comets. 1970 saw Torino and Falcon, the Falcon name, of course, being added to the full-size or mid-size Torino. We saw 496,644 of these Fords versus 120,010 Comets and Montegos in 1970. 1971 saw 326,463 Fairlanes versus 57,094 Cyclones, Comets, etc. So again, Mercury lived in the shadow of Ford. But again, from the beginning in 1939, that was kind of the plan. Ford handled the high volume, fought with Chevrolet, whereas the Mercury brand was brought along to sort of duke it out with the General Motors, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac mid-priced cars. So even though Mercury didn't outsell Ford, well, that was kind of the plan from the beginning. Okay, that brings to a close the Ford and Mercury component of the show. We now transition into the Chrysler Corporation realm. And this is fact number 601. We're going to start this out with Plymouth. We'll move on to Dodge after these 200 Plymouth facts are related. Okay, here we go. Legend and Lore Department, Plymouth, fact 601. Not long ago, a few in the general public knew or cared what a Hemi was. But thanks to the massive revival of all things hemispherical at Chrysler and a brilliantly conceived 2002 advertising campaign built around the legendary engine, even soccer moms know to ask, quote, "That thing got a Hemi in it?" End quote. It's all such a contrast to the dark days of the mid-1970s when Chrysler was in full retreat mode from its Hemi glory days. But a funny thing happened in 1975. Bruce Springsteen revived the word Hemi in a song that was heard by millions around the world. Listen closely to Born to Run, and you'll hear the boss sing, quote, "Beyond the palace, Hemi-powered drones scream down the boulevard," end quote. Sweet. Yeah, that's true. The Hemi engine has been immortalized in song a couple times here and there, but I remember being a kid of about 12 years old or so in 1975 and hearing Bruce Springsteen, that song with Hemi-powered drones screaming down a boulevard. I thought, there is hope. Of course, 1975 was the year that my mom brought home a new Dodge Colt. It was a leftover 74. So Dodge dealers were not selling Hemis at that point in time, but the memory didn't go away. Of course, it's back. Okay, speaking of coming back, let's move on to fact number 602. Is the Hemi Cuda coming back? With the unfortunate passing of the Plymouth nameplate after the 2001 model year, 1 year late for the Hemi's third coming in 2002 aboard Dodge light trucks, we'll never get to see any rear-wheel drive Hemi-powered Plymouth passenger cars again. Or will we? Recent rumblings confirm that Chrysler has filed for patent protection on the Cuda name. With the Fiat-Chrysler merger going along quite smoothly, rumors persist the next generation Challenger may get a name change to, you guessed it, Cuda. Other indications predict a shorter wheelbase and tighter dimensions for the new rear-wheel drive pony car model, and yes, Hemi power is a virtual sure thing. So while the Plymouth brand is highly unlikely to come back, the same cannot be said about the Cuda. Fingers remain crossed. I'm completely okay with the blending of merging, I'm completely okay with the blending and merging of legacy nameplates as long as there's a Hemi power involved. You should be too. Okay, here's the thing. This is fact number 602, and this book was written in 2013, 8 years ago. At that point in time, well, the Challenger was a fairly recent thing. Got to keep in mind, the Challenger came out in 2008, and in 2013, Challenger was only 5 years old. Well, now it's a lot older than that. But it's true, in 2013, there were rumblings that the Barracuda, the Cuda might be coming back, and in fact, that there was a new Challenger platform coming along. We now know in hindsight, today in 2021, that the LC Challenger has not been changed at all. In fact, since 2008 till 2021, something like 500,000 Challengers have been built, which is a fantastic fact. But so far, we have not seen the Barracuda name. Not sure we ever will either. So sometimes the book can be wrong. Okay, moving on. Fact number 603. Plymouth fans were confused in 1972 when new Pontiacs appeared with RTS emblems affixed to their instrument panels. The seemingly twisted revival of Plymouth's rapid transit system, where member cars must run in a quarter mile in 14 seconds or quicker, was actually Pontiac marketing speak for radial-tuned suspension, not rapid transit system. It seems Pontiac engineers and marketers weren't aware of Plymouth's prior use when they decided to tout RTS status on new Pontiacs sold with radial tires, none of which could run in the 14-second quarter-mile time. Yeah, it's true. I remember a buddy of mine had about a 75 or 76 Pontiac Formula, and on the dash it said RTS. And yeah, that means radial tune suspension, not rapid transit system. No, the Plymouth never revived a Firebird. They were two very different creatures. Okay, getting into fact number 604. Okay, one of the most bizarre magazine tests of all time was titled the Airstream Grand Prix and involved a 1968 Hemi Road Runner and a Buick LeSabre 350-280, a Caprice Classic 427 3D5 horse, and a Pontiac Ventura 400 with 340 horsepower. A self-admitted abusive test of car, hitch, and trailer, the story appeared in the November 1968 issue of Motorcade magazine. To explore the challenges of towing a mobile home, the Hemi Road Runner automatic hardtop was fitted with a $92 ease lift equalizing trailer hitch and then connected to a 4,200-pound, 27-foot Airstream Overlander International Twin travel trailer. Testing was conducted at the now defunct Riverside Raceway and included a slalom course, 0 to 60 acceleration, 35 to 55 mile per hour passing tests, and 65 to 0 panic stops. Test driver and story co-author Jim Wright wrote, quote, "One would think that any car with 425 plus horsepower would make an excellent trailer towing car. This is not necessarily so. This type of engine is very sensitive to high combustion heat. There was no problem at level cruising speeds, but the slightest load, such as any type of hill, on the engine produced serious detonation. I'm afraid that if this car were used regularly for trailer towing, it would result in burned pistons and or valves," end quote. The Hemi bested its closest competitor, the 427 Caprice, by a wide margin. The Torque Flight 323 geared Hemi Road Runner did 0 to 60 in 14.9 seconds, 35 to 55 in 7.2 seconds, and the 65 to 0 panic stop in 193 feet, virtually the same as an unloaded Roadrunner, thanks to the Airstream's self-contained brakes. Today, it's impossible, but so much fun to imagine flogging a rare, one of 443 built, street Hemi treasure this way. Also, you gotta wonder why the motorcade test crew didn't adjust the Hemi's ignition timing. Yeah, it's crazy. If you get a chance, on eBay or wherever it is, grab a copy of that November 1968 Motorcade magazine. In fact, on the cover is a small picture of a Airstream motor home being towed by, I think it was the Pontiac. But inside there, yeah, you see a Hemi Road Runner getting flogged and abused, towing a trailer. Crazy. All right, fact 605, Plymouth Prowler facts. The Plymouth Prowler was a hit or miss proposition with 11,702 built between 1997 and 2002. Its retro styling was a hit, but few appreciated its V6 automatic-only status. As the 1999 SEMA show in Las Vegas, a hint of what never came to pass was displayed, a V8 Prowler prototype called the Howler. Packed with a PowerTech 4.7-liter V8 and 5-speed manual transaxle, the concept proved Prowler's chassis and suspension were fully ready to make the leap to V8 and stick-shift stardom. Unfortunately, a number of factors, 4.7 V8 supply problems, CAFE skewing, federal crash certification, etc., overshadowed the dream. Why wasn't the Howler gifted with a Gen 3 Hemi? Well, we've got to remember, the Hemi's return was still a few years away when the Howler made its showing back in 1999, excuse me. Too bad. Yeah, it's true. The Prowler is a, well, love it or don't situation. Some Mopar people think it was very brave for Plymouth to release that creature. Of course, later on in its final year or two, it became a Chrysler vehicle after Plymouth was dropped. But the great thing about the Prowler is 700 pounds of every Prowler was made of aluminum. Again, very brave of Chrysler to do that, but no, they never put a Hemi in them. That might have changed the way they were seen, but to put a Hemi in a Prowler, well, you need a time machine. Again, the 5.7 Hemi did not arrive for a few years after the end of the Prowler's discontinuation. Okay, more Prowler activity with 606, Fact 606 that is. To address the termination of the Plymouth brand in 2001, Prowlers were shuffled with no substantial changes under the Chrysler banner. All 2001 and 2002 Prowlers are correctly referred to as Chrysler Prowlers. Of the 11,702 built, 3,170 wore Chrysler badges. No Prowlers were built for retail sale in 1998. So it's true, if you're referring to a 2001 or 2 Prowler, it's not a Plymouth, it's a Chrysler. Okay, Chris, how are we looking on time? These shows, we try to make them about a half an hour long. Where are we at, Chris?
25 minutes.
25 minutes. Okay, another 5 minutes and another 3 or 4 facts for you, dear listener and viewer, here on our YouTube channel. This is, of course, the Steve Mignonti YouTube channel you're seeing me on. And keep in mind, while this may be a little static and a little slow for some YouTube viewers, just me sitting here reading from a book, keep in mind that as we move forward with the Steve Mag's Muscle Car Show podcast, we will be bringing in guests and maybe even showing some items on camera. So the camera will make sense as we go further. Okay, let us now move on to fact 607. It's a recorded fact that Sox and Martin may have remained with Mercury for the 1965 model year had it not been for Lincoln Mercury's refusal to supply 2 personal use cars for Ronnie and his partner, Buddy Martin. Plymouth's generosity won them over, so to speak, and the rest is Hemi drag racing history. So what kind of cars did Ronnie drive when he wasn't on the track? Well, the April 1970 issue of Auto Driver magazine offers this fascinating insight from an interview with Ronnie at the Chrysler Proving Grounds in Chelsea, Michigan. Quote, "The new Hemi Cougar drives a lot like the 1969 Hemi Road Runner I've been driving on the street, but it's lighter, lower to the ground, and it handles a little bit better. The Plymouth people gave me an Imperial to use for a while, but I like my Road Runner a lot better. I don't feel old enough for an Imperial. I'll probably go for the 6-barrel Cougar this year, but it won't be easy to decide." End quote. At the time, Ronnie was just 28 years old. Now, of course, if you don't know, Sox and Martin were pretty much the Plymouth drag racing team from 1965 through about 1975. But before that, yeah, Sox and Martin ran a Mercury in 1964. And it is true that Lincoln Mercury executives did not want to give Buddy Martin, Ronnie Sox's partner, a personal use Mercury. So they says, well, you know what? We're going to go to Plymouth. And they did. And of course, in 65, they ran a race Hemi. And of course, as we say here, Hemi history was made. Okay, moving on. Let's talk some Richard Petty facts with fact 608. Quote, "I know that you expect people to get killed in auto racing sometimes. You don't like it, but you expect it. And I suppose spectators take a certain risk anytime they go to a track. But you don't expect little boys. You don't expect any spectators to get killed or injured." End quote. Those were Richard Petty's words in an interview published in the February 1966 issue of Car Life magazine. A year earlier, in April of 1965, before a crowd of 12,000 spectators at a small trip in Dallas, Georgia, a tie rod broke beneath Petty's outlawed 43 Junior match race Hemi Cougar, sending it into a crowd. An 8-year-old boy was killed, adding a sad footnote to Petty's distinguished racing career. Ultimately, lawyers settled with the claimants, and Petty's Cougar was rebuilt with enhanced wheelbase alteration and a Hilborn injected Hemi in place of the carburetor job in the crashed car. Chrysler and NASCAR also came to terms over the 426 Hemi, giving birth to the 1966 Street Hemi along the way, and Petty went back to roundy-round action. The rebuilt Barracuda was campaigned for a few more seasons with Eddie Ratliff in command of the operation. Yeah, it's true. It's a sad footnote that Richard Petty's first match bash Hemi Barracuda did go into the stands, and an 8-year-old boy was killed. Again, that's part of the risk of any kind of sport like this, but it's terrible when it happens. Okay, let's move on. Fact number 609. Why didn't Plymouth counter the 1965 Shelby GT350 Mustang with a similar Barracuda? The Formula S was a good start, but not nearly as hardcore as Shelby's offering. According to research concluded recently by SCCA racer Mike Ritz, it almost happened. Ritz, who currently campaigns the Team Starfish 1966 Formula S Barracuda in vintage road race events, uncovered a 13-page FIA homologation request on Chrysler letterhead claiming that between November 15th and December 15th, 1965, Plymouth built 500 1966 Barracuda GTs. The goal was to secure assurance they'd be legal for competition in FIA-sanctioned Group 3 GT road racing events. Each Barracuda GT was purportedly built with a 318 small block a year before its official introduction, the 1967 model year, with an aluminum intake manifold, Holly 4160 carburetor, 8-quart oil pan, steel tube headers, and full-length dual exhaust. Other exotica included an 8 3/4 rear axle, 11-inch front disc brakes, 10-inch rear drums, 5x7 cast aluminum wheels with steel rims, thin plexiglass rear window, a trunk-mounted battery, twin 20-pound front bucket seats, and in place of the rear seat, a 22-gallon auxiliary fuel tank, which combined with the stock 18-gallon unit allowed 40 gallons of fuel for endurance races. The crazy part is that the FIA Standard Certificate of Minimum Production document is signed by Bob Cahill, manager of special performance events for Chrysler Plymouth, and also by H.E. Weiss, manager of the Valiant Performance and Product Planning Division. So did these cars actually get built? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Perhaps Plymouth witnessed Shelby's sale of a mere 561 GT 350 Mustangs in 1965 and got cold feet. The concept was revisited with excellent results 4 years later with the arrival of the 1970 AAR Cougar. So yeah, it's funny, sometimes just because a thing exists on paper and seems to be published and written about doesn't mean it was real. So keep in mind, the first generation Barracuda from 1964 through 67, the vast majority of them had single exhaust systems. The only ones that didn't were the 340s and the 383 cars of 67, 68. So 66 and earlier, there were single exhaust cars, but this paper would have you believe there was a dual exhaust system designed for the 65 Barracuda. It never happened, let alone the 318. Chris, what's up?
We're at 30 minutes.
30 minutes, all right. Well, I guess that will end us for this episode, number 41. And let us see you next time on the Steve Max Muscle Car Show podcast. Now, keep in mind, we are sponsored by High Octane Classics, the Northeast's largest muscle car and supercar dealership located at 143 Washington Street in Auburn, Massachusetts. High Octane Classics buys and sells and services muscle cars and exotics. Give them a call at 508-859-4515. And as always, be sure to visit the Steve Magnanti YouTube channel. We have a lot of junkyard videos, altered wheelbase videos, and model car action. You'll enjoy it. And we'll see you soon with show number 42, and we're going to pick up with more Plymouth Facts. See you then. Hasta mañana.